What are the AFC tight end depth charts looking like after NFL free agency? It's time to break it down from a fantasy football perspective here as we begin another week on Locked On Fantasy Football.
Our Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. Check out the site and catch up on NFL free agency. We're going into full draft mode. The free agency has calmed down after the big trades. We broke down the latest last week. We had Matt Ryan on the move from the Falcons to the Colts, and the shocker, Tyreek Hill, going from the Chiefs to the Dolphins. We broke down those shows. In the middle of all this, we were doing our depth chart updates. So we already looked at running backs for AFC and NFC. We got to get through the other positions. So we're going to wait it out a little bit at wide receiver and see what happens there. But tight end has kind of calmed down here. So we're going to focus on tight end. We're going to take the AFC today. And our next show, barring another big move happening, and we kind of set ourselves up for that last week. We had some good insight, though, on the things that happened trade-wise in the NFL and changes at quarterback and wide receiver. We will look at wide receiver and look at where it stands here, all those changes. Speaking of Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, some big things that have changed there to shake up the depth chart. So we'll do a double dose here of tight ends, AFC and NFC. We'll do it again with wide receivers, and we'll close this little mini-series that we have, and then we'll flip the script a little bit to draft talk after that. So a lot of good stuff here that we have to look at in free agency. We'll break it down for you here with tight ends. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are free and available for you on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered the season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's look at what we have here for our depth charts, and we'll start in Baltimore. There's not much change here with the Ravens. We know that. Mark Andrews is locked and loaded. He's an elite option here in fantasy football. That's not going to change. It didn't really matter who was the quarterback. In some ways, it did improve when they had Tyler Huntley in there throwing to him. They were locked into him quite a bit. Part of it was also the wide receivers dropped off. Marquise Brown and Rashad Bateman weren't as effective as we were going forward, but behind him is Nick Boyle. Nick Boyle has been hurt for a lot of the time here, so he's finally healthy for this team. So he's back in the mix. He's mainly a blocking tight end. He's reliable. He knows this offense up and down and well. So if something were to happen to Mark Andrews, I think it's still a good person that they can lean on here in Nick Boyle. So pretty much status quo we've seen. They moved on from Max Williams. He's now in Arizona for his second season. So this is where they've settled on Andrews and Boyle. And Andrews pretty much crosses over to be a wide receiver. Interesting third member of the depth chart is Josh Oliver. One time had some upside with the Jaguars as a receiver. So someone that could get a little bit run if he can get some action in training camp. But Boyle's the overall better blocker. So right now I would say, if you're going to say Andrews' backup is the same, I would say it is Boyle right now. Oliver is going to turn some heads maybe with some plays he can make in training camp. Remember, this is a team that brought along Darren Waller. So they're always looking for that hybrid receiver here to kind of develop. And Waller, of course, went on, and we'll talk about him, to break out and be a fantasy football stud for the Raiders on the second team. So Andrews still there on the top of the board, arguably the guy that you want to take over all of their tight ends here because of his usage in this Baltimore offense, downfield passing and in the red zone with Lamar Jackson. All right, we'll go to our next team here. We go from Baltimore to Buffalo. Look at the Bills. The Bills may not be done here at tight end. They've been kicking the tires on Rob Gronkowski. Speaking of whom, Gronkowski has not made a decision here whether he's going to return to the Bucs, and Gronkowski is a Buffalo native, so that's why he's come up, and he's talked about wanting to go to a winning team, and it's either this team or the next team. We'll talk about the Bengals. So right now, that's the good news for Dawson Knox. He stays on the top of the depth chart here as the primary receiver. I wouldn't worry too much about another Buccaneers tight end, former Buccaneer right now. O.J. Howard coming over to Buffalo from Tampa. He's more of a blocker. We haven't seen much of his production in a while now, and it's a new offense, so they can incorporate two tight ends a little bit more away from Brian Dable, but I don't think they'll change it up too much and go away from the strengths of Josh Allen. So Howard is a pretty good blocker. They can bring him in certain situations there to help. They're good backup if something were to happen to Dawson Knox. I think they'd use Howard pretty well. First round pick didn't quite work out of Alabama there in Tampa to really dominate the way they thought. He's been a serviceable, pretty decent player, good overall, but nothing in the way of receiving here that you can hang your hat on. Tommy Sweeney is the third tight end, so he drops down a little bit. He was the primary backup to Dawson Knox. So with Howard in there, you figure Howard has some swing value as a blocker receiver, so he's jumped Sweeney. And then Quinton Morris is their third or fourth option here in Buffalo tight end. He's just a guy that they brought in for camp body, so we'll see how it works out with him. But again, Knox is in a good position here as long as they don't pick up Gronk at any point in this offseason. Here, you can't totally rule it out. You can't totally rule it out for the Bengals either. So they have a big change here. CJ Uzomah is gone. He left in free agency to the Jets. Hayden Hurst was on the market with Kyle Pitts in Atlanta. So they signed Hayden Hurst. Remember, he came to the league as a first-round pick with the Ravens. He was traded to the Falcons. He was a little bit older as a first-round pick because he was a baseball prospect. So he's in his early 20s already, coming to the league, older than most players. So he's not a bad veteran player, but he hasn't flashed as much as we thought as a receiver. I don't know if he's that much better than Drew Sample, who's the dedicated blocking back. You also have your third tight end, Mitchell Wilcox, the body that they're looking at, can maybe make some noise here. And then the fourth name is rather intriguing to me in this mix. Thaddeus Moss, that's Randy's son. Intriguing because he is with Joe Burrow, so there could be some chemistry that develops there. These are two LSU connectors in the past. Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson were there, but Thaddeus Moss was a big factor as well in what they did in that LSU explosive offense in the 1 year with Burrow there under Ed Orgeron. So really looking at that Joe Brady offense, that's where he operated in. So there's going to be some familiarity there between Moss and Burrow, but that's all you can look at right now. Again, I think the tight ends are going to be phased out a little bit more. It's not a team that necessarily uses a lot of 12 personnel. Remember, CJ Uzomah's receiving production was a bit sporadic here in Cincinnati. I think that's going to be about it for Hurst, and maybe even less so, because I think Uzomah is a better overall short area receiver than Hurst at this point in their collective careers here. So, yeah, so Sample has an opportunity here if Hurst is slowing down. He's also been a guy that's had a lot of injuries, but right now Hurst is at the top of the depth chart replacing Uzomah. We go from Cincinnati to Cleveland. A big change there is no more Austin Hooper. David Njoku got the franchise tag, so they covet him and want his role to be a little bit better here, the Kevin Stefanski offense, with now Deshaun Watson. So everything points up for the Browns receiving core, especially tight end with Watson in the mix. So you got Njoku having a nice chance here. Remember, another first-round pick that we're looking at, like a Howard, like a Hurst, trying to rebound here, still on his first team. And again, it really helps that there's no Austin Hooper there. They do have Harrison Bryant. I do like him quite a bit. They need to unleash him a little bit, see what he can do as a blocker and receiver. So opportunity for Bryant, much like we have Sample in Cincinnati. And then Miller Forstall, you might remember him from Alabama. I thought he's a pretty good receiver, and I think they're going to look at him a little bit more for some depth here to replace what they lost in Hooper. So I think he has a lot of qualities that Hooper has there. So we're going to watch this carefully right now. Njoku might have more fantasy value than he's ever had in this particular offense and having a key role with a top-flight quarterback. But we'll watch out for Bryant being that athletic guy that really could break out at any point here to help this team. And remember, there's some wide receiver limitations still with Amari Cooper being the number one in Cleveland. Last thing we'll talk about this segment, they traded away their top tight end, Noah Fant. The Broncos, they're stuck with Albert Ukobenen. He is the guy that they liked out of Missouri. Good connection with their former quarterback, Drew Lock. Now, Drew Lock is in Seattle with Noah Fant. So Alberto has some potential here. The concern here with Russell Wilson is he's not really been a tight end throwing guy. We've seen some flashes in the past with Will Dissly and not much from Gerald Everett last year. But really, you look at this Broncos team, you got Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Tim Patrick. A lot of 11 personnel, I figure, is where the Denver's going to line up. But Alberto has an opportunity with no Fant there to do some damage. And he also doesn't have much competition here. It just Eric Tomlinson, he's bounced around, a former Jet, former Patriot, so he's been on multiple teams here, so journeyman there. So Albert O, good opportunity, but again, could be low on the totem pole in terms of the mouths to feed here with Russell Wilson. He's going to look at the three receivers and push the ball downfield. He's going to look at what they can do out of the backfield with Javonte Williams. So again, it's not the best situation for him. In a lot of other cases, just being upgraded there and being the clear-cut starter without Fant would be very promising, but not in this particular situation. So let's curb our enthusiasm here for Albert. No, he does not have an opportunity. He is pretty athletic and a good receiver, but again, you want them to be in that top three realm of receiving, and that's not the case here with Wilson, and not a tight end friendly quarterback in his history in fantasy football either. All right, we will break down the rest of the AFC team depth chart updates at tight end. We knocked down 5 teams. We still talk about 11. We'll go 6 in our next segment, 5 in our final segment. That'll add up to 16. Before we get into the Texans and Colts and Jaguars and the trio from the AFC South and the trio from the AFC West, it's that time of the year, it's almost April, where you can give up on all your New Year's resolutions, but this year will be different. And for me, it's all because of Built Bar. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right. Built Bar makes me feel like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. In fact, I love them. Have you tried the Puffs? So you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. So good. They're going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. That includes the Puffs. 100% real chocolate. Go to Built.com and see the macros on these Built Bars, and you'll be blown away, really. I mean, look at it. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, and only 4 grams net carbs, and packed with 17 grams of protein. You're not going to get any kind of protein from a candy bar, which has usually around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. There's always great flavors coming out that you can check out. Some of the classics include mint brownie and coconut almond. They're all delicious, and they're all working at Built Bar to come up with a new flavor to add to the lineup here. New styles we've seen with the Puffs. Great addition to the regular Built Bars. The Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it delicious first and figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how they do it, but they pull it off every time. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, it is time to continue the show here and look at the Texans, Colts, Jaguars, Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers, and their tight end depth charts here in segment 2. So excited for that. Make sure you're checking out all the great shows here on the Locked On Network. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Make sure you follow Locked On NFL, one of those other shows here on the network. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's break things down further here from the tight end depth chart perspective. Now, here's a sleeper that I'm looking at that has some value, starting with the Texans. So the Texans kind of reshuffling their tight ends. They're long gone with remember the Jordan type players that they had in there that looked at here. Well, they have another Jordan. It's Brevin Jordan in there. And I really like Brevin Jordan when he was in Miami. I thought he was an athletic pass catcher. I thought he would end up in a better spot here to produce. We know the quarterback situation turned out to be a mess. Jordan was a little bit banged up, didn't get on the field. So they had all different types of guys that they try to recycle at this position. But now Jordan has a real chance to stand out. And remember, there's not a lot in the receiving corps. There's still just Brand Cooks and Nico Collins here. Davis Mills is right now the quarterback again. And Jordan can be a helpful quarterback, whether it's Mills or another young quarterback or a bridge option that Houston could look at later. So really like Brevin Jordan, has some upside. He's got to get in the pecking order. That's what I like, especially because, again, Brandon Cooks is the number one. I think Collins will step up a little bit more. But you have to say Jordan should get a little bit more run here to help them because they need as much passing game pop as they can get now without Watson for good for sure. Pharaoh Brown is number 2. And then you have a former Buccaneer, Anthony Auclair. He's the third guy. So Texans, not a lot to see there at this position. But remember, you had Jordan Akins and those type of players. Well, it's changing here with Brevin Jordan being very appealing here at this position for sure. So we'll see. Athletic guy with upside, pretty good situation to potentially produce. we're not going to sleep on him as a tight end too with some upside. We go to Indianapolis. There was a big change there. Jack Doyle, very reliable in fantasy football for when he was healthy for a few years. Well, he's retired. So now Mo Alley-Cox, who was re-signed, by the way, got a new deal to come back. They wanted him in this offense, and now you have Matt Ryan as your quarterback. And we know Matt Ryan loves throwing to the tight end. If you look back all throughout the years, you have Tony Gonzalez early in his career. We have Hayden Hurst for a short period of time, but Kyle Pitts was the guy there that they looked at. Austin Hooper in between. So there's a guy that likes to throw the tight end. Mo Alley-Cox had some moments in fantasy football. We know that. There's no more concern about the work being cut in by Jack Doyle. There's one guy that I do also want to watch a little bit, Kylan Grantson. He's made some plays for this team, flashed a little bit. There's not much behind it with Farrad Green there, kid named Wolf out of Georgia. So there's not a lot after Mo Alley-Cox and Grantson. So I like the situation. I like the style of offense. I like the quarterback there that can make Alley-Cox a little bit of a sleeper there in the tight end one conversation here in 2022. The Jaguars are also changing things up. Goodbye to our favorite guy. It's March, so we have to say goodbye to James O'Shaughnessy, our favorite tight end. Now, Evan Ingram is number one of the depth chart. They signed him from the Giants. Dan Arnold, remember him? They traded the C.J. Henderson, the cornerback there, for Arnold from the Panthers. He was a starter. He's putting up some numbers there until he got hurt, and they had to flip to O'Shaughnessy. And they also have Chris Manhertz, another former Panther in this offense. And remember, Arnold and Manhertz a little bit tied with the old coaching staff with Urban Meyer and Darrell Bevell. So there's a tension and attachment there. And Luke Farrell out of Ohio State. So we know that was an Urban Meyer pick last year. So big chance for Evan Ingram in this new offense completely here with Doug Peterson. Peterson has liked Ingram for a long time, looking on the other side from the Eagles, Ingram being for the Giants. First round pick again, trying to find his way with his second team here. And this is not good news for Dan Arnold or Chris Manhertz. I think Ingram and Trevor Lawrence can form a pretty good security blanket connection here. And remember, the Jaguars receiving core, a lot of things is in flux. They did add Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, but there's no bona fide 1, 2, 3 kind of a pecking order here. So Ingram has a big opportunity to rebound. And we know he flashed some numbers early in his career with Eli Manning, another Ole Miss product there with the Giants, but things have kind of faded here with Daniel Jones. So good change of scenery to potentially save Ingram's value as a reality and fantasy football player here in 2022. The Chiefs are still on Travis Kelce as their starter. We know that, and he takes on a bigger importance here. Without Tyreek Hill, he's the clear go-to guy now for Patrick Mahomes. And I did add Juju Smith-Schuster and looked at Marcus Valdes-Scantling. So it is interesting how the Chiefs are trying to make up for Tyreek Hill. But Travis Kelce is going to dominate the targets. Noah Gray, I really like him, but why not Blake Bell? The Belldozer is still ahead of Gray. So maybe Gray can take an expanded role here, be the heir apparent to Kelce, who could start to wear down here. And then you have Jody Fortson out of Valdosta State. He's their fourth tight end. So looking at this for the Chiefs here, they've had some different guys cycle through here, but Kelce still a dominant number one here and should be even bigger factor without Hill available for Patrick Mahomes. The Raiders had Darren Waller coming off an injury-riddled season. They still have Foster Moreau behind him. Moreau flashed a little bit for Waller, but then he didn't kind of stick out as a super sub. Then you have Jacob Hollister. He's still bouncing around. Yeah, we've seen him on different teams, the Patriots, Seahawks, just to name a few here. So again, he's around, but he's an athletic guy, and we'll watch that battle after Waller. Moreau has had some moments, but Hollister has some upside here that we're going to watch for here as a receiver in Las Vegas, especially with the Josh McDaniels connection and that type of offense taking over for Derek Carr, and someone now playing off Devontae Adams. So you have Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, and Waller being the third receiver. So anybody they can bring up here to potentially spell Waller is looking good, and Hollister cannot be forgotten here, given that he knows the offense of McDaniels. The last team we'll talk about in this segment is the Los Angeles Chargers. They picked up Gerald Everett in free agency, so they let Jared Cook go. They cycled him out. They just didn't want to go that direction. So Everett, I think, was disappointing in Seattle. I think we had to temper expectations because, again, Russell Wilson didn't throw a lot to the tight end. There was still a lot about the wide receivers here. They also had Will Dissly there and some other options at tight end. So here, Gerald Everett steps into a situation where Donald Parham Jr. is returning. They also have Trey McKitty. He's a guy from Georgia. And they have a familiar guy there out of the same system of Justin Herbert, Hunter Kampmoyer of Oregon. So they've got a couple guys padding the depth chart, but Jared Cook is a bit hit or miss there, fell into more tight end 2 than tight end 1 category. Gerald Everett trying to get into a better spot here. Remember, he knows Brandon Staley, who was connected to the Rams. Everett was a longtime Ram before he went on to the Seahawks and Shane Waldron last year. So the Chargers, once again, giving him a shot. And again, big arm of Justin Herbert. Still, you figure the main target's going to be Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Now, Jalen Guyton is the number 3. But Everett can have a role here for sure. Don't forget about Austin Eckler out of the backfield. But this is definitely a better situation with the arm and upside of Herbert, stepping in a situation where there's no Cook versus going to Seattle, where, again, it was just not in the cards to produce with Wilson there for Gerald Everett. And that's why he signed the 1-year deal, and he gets another deal here to return to Los Angeles just with the Chargers this time. And we're going to watch Everett. Again, it's in a good situation. Whenever you're with a good quarterback and you're not too far down in the pecking order of receivers, you're going to get our attention. That certainly is the case for Gerald Everett. All right, we still have 5 more teams and their updates for tight end depth charts in the AFC to talk about here on the show. We will do that in our final segment. I really love athletic greens, and you should too. I started taking athletic greens because I was looking for a bit of an immunity and energy boost here every day. I also want to get a bit healthier, get my system back in order. Well, athletic greens did that for me. I've been into it as soon as I got my first pack. It's been about a month here, and it's super healthy for me, and I actually love the taste as well. It's got a mild tropical taste, just really good way to start your morning. Fresh, delicious, and it's going to give you 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to start your day right. It's a special blend of ingredients that supports your gut health, which is important, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all the things you need here as you get older. I really enjoy having athletic greens, whether I have it as a side with my breakfast or on the go. If I need to get out the door and get some energy to pick me up in the morning, I got it as well in their to-go bottles. Really amazing that athletic greens is so healthy and delicious for you, and it costs less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper than getting all the different supplements yourself. You're investing in all-in-one nutritional insurance. I love it. And you can check it out. It's not just me who loves it. Athletic Greens has more than 7,000 5-star reviews, recommended by professional athletes, trusted by leading health experts such as Tim Ferriss and Michael Gervais. So really, you cannot get any healthier and better than Athletic Greens by incorporating it into your daily routine. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's still pretty cold out there. So it's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. Again, get in on Athletic Greens now, and you'll get those 5 free travel packs as well as the 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, it is time to close the show here. We'll look at 5 more AFC tight end depth charts for you here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Don't forget, we will talk about the NFC tomorrow. Makes sense. We've taken care of the running back depth charts. We're now halfway through the tight end depth charts. Once we're done with the show, the Dolphins were pretty secure in what they did. They brought back Mike Gesicki on the franchise tag, signed him to that 1-year deal. Durham Smythe was also returned in the mix. And so is Adam Shaheen for now. They also have a guy that I've liked in college, but he hasn't really done much here in the situation, probably in the crowd in Miami. It's Hunter Long. So tight end is definitely getting a bit of a boost here with Mike McDaniel coming. And we know Gesicki has been steadily improving every year, has a good chemistry with Tua Tagovailoa. And we know that Mike McDaniel just worked with George Kittle. So maybe there'll be a bit of a separation. We know like guys like Ross Dwelly, those people are kind of afterthoughts behind George Kittle in the passing game. That's what we kind of want with Smith and Shaheen to kind of be swing backups there, Long to be a bit developmental. So Gesicki's in a really good spot returning here. Nothing has really changed, so you can keep producing. Would we like it if Smith and Shaheen weren't thorns in the side of usage? Yeah, but that's what the Dolphins are going to diversify. And again, I see the parallel there in San Francisco to Miami with McDaniel and Gesicki being a really good spot to produce here, especially playing off Tyreek Hill. And we know how that worked out for Travis Kelce in Kansas City. All right, let's talk about the Patriots. This depth chart is pretty familiar to you. Hunter Henry and Jonas Smith, those were their two free agent acquisitions of last year. And then they have their two draft picks from a few years ago, Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene. So pretty much it leans toward Hunter Henry. That was who had the best chemistry with Mac Jones last year. Jonas Smith just couldn't stay healthy. That's something that carried over from his Titans days. Henry kind of shook off those durability concerns from the Chargers and really produced. So Hunter Henry can be another tight end one option here. Usage of the red zone, he was on fire scoring touchdowns. I think he can be more effective elsewhere on the field. They don't have a lot in the receiving core. The Patriots were kind of quiet in making moves there. So, again, good setup for Hunter Henry, but clearly there was a separation last year, and I think you have to feel that again between him and Jonas Smith. And those younger tight ends, it's probably the last chance for them to stick in New England. We go from New England to New York, also in the same division, the AFC East with the Jets. The Jets splurged on tight end quite a bit. So their previous depth chart pretty much was led by Ryan Griffin, the former Texan, and he's had some moments. And Trayvon Wesco, an athletic guy that has had a lot of opportunities from West Virginia, original Jet. So they go out and get two guys from the outside, CJ Uzomah, so take him away from the Bengals after a pretty good supporting season there with Joe Burrow. And Tyler Conklin of the Vikings, who filled in for Irv Smith Jr. when he went down for Minnesota last year pretty well and had some flashing moments there with Kirk Cousins. So right now it's Uzomah, Conklin, and does this mean the Jets use more 12 personnel? I would think so. I mean, that's a pretty good investment there. You have at wide receiver Corey Davis and Denzel Mims and Braxton Berrios and Elijah Moore, but I could see a lot of scenarios where you have Davis and Moore out in the field there and kind of give some scheme versatility here for Mike LaFleur, another 49ers trained Kyle Shanahan type offense coordinator. So right now I'd say Uzomah has a little bit more value, but Conklin being there really hurts both of their values overall because they're a bit interchangeable, very similar type players. That's why I think they're going to use them in certain sets here together, or why would you go out and spend that money? So interesting to see what the Jets are doing, but you wish Uzomah and Conklin were more in separate situations to produce, but that is not the case. Let's look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we know Pat Freiermuth is in line to be a tight end one. He's going to be special. No Ben Roethlisberger, but that I think is going to help with the short to intermediate routes, getting it down the field, and also using him in the red zone. So Freiermuth is on his way to being impactful, producing tight end the way he was at Penn State. Another Big Ten guy behind him is Zach Gentry out of Michigan. I've liked his skill set, but he's only a backup here. You also have a kid named Raider from Youngstown State. We know Youngstown State, he's in Ohio, but a lot of Steelers fans and country there. So they have him third, and they also have Jace Sternberger. Remember him from the Packers with Robert Tonyan breaking out and kind of latching on to being an Aaron Rodgers key target. Sternberger was the odd personality. He had some issue off the field as well with the suspension, but they're giving him a bit of a flyer. So Sternberger has an opportunity, a little bit of a wide receiver hybrid, but things are really looking good in year two for Pat Freiermuth in Pittsburgh. All right, the final player we'll talk about here that is in a new spot to be a starter is Austin Hooper. Good landing spot here with the Titans. Anthony Firkser has been displaced here, so no more Firkser out of Harvard. They go with Austin Hooper out of Stanford, the Harvard of the West in many people's minds, but it's the Stanford of the West as well. So Austin Hooper, again, Zach Ertz, we've seen a lot of production from players here. Dalton Schultz has been the next one here for the Cowboys, really come through. So Austin Hooper was a bad situation in Cleveland. We're talking about Njoku, Harrison Bryant was a bit of a crowd there, was not used the same way he was in Atlanta as a key target for Matt Ryan. So I think it's going to change here. You look at the pecking order for the Titans. A.J. Brown is there. Robert Woods coming off an ACL, their new wide receiver. Talk about their wide receiver depth charts here in a couple shows. But yeah, so you have now legitimate remixed receivers there in Brown and Woods. And Hooper, you'd say, is third right now out of the other guys that they've shuffled in at wide receiver. So like that trio there. So that's a good landing spot for Hooper, the team that can incorporate the tight end well here. Jeff Swain drops down to not having too much value. Ryan Izzo, mainly a special teams player. They also have Tommy Hudson, who flashed a little bit. He's an Arizona State product. So looking at overall, Hooper in a good situation. So you got some guys in there. You have Hooper, you have Gerald Everett, You got Evan Ingram maybe having some good opportunities with their new teams here in 2022. You also have Hayden Hurst and CJ Uzama, kind of related moves here for those two teams. So a lot of things changing at tight end as we see, and maybe some more sleeper options that we can look at that can give us some backdoor tight end 1 production or tight end 2 with upside in our streaming situation. So that's what we're looking for, trying to examine all these depth charts and see what these offenses are doing and what they're planned for these tight ends from the receiving standpoint here in 2022. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Again, we will discuss the NFC tight end depth chart, see how those situations are shaping up after that for free agency on the next show, barring another big trade or something we have to react to. Now, make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL quarterback Eric Crocker bringing the NFL Draft to life with insight analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day, and we'll catch you tomorrow with a look right now at the NFC tight end depth charts.